Fernando Mendoza was the key piece that Curt Cignetti needed to transform Indiana football even more than people thought was possible. From Cal transfer to Heisman Trophy winner, Indiana's undefeated national championship run in 2025 wouldn't have happened without Fernando Mendoza. And that's not taking anything away from the team or Coach Curt Cignetti or anything like that. That is meant only to give credit to Mendoza and how good he was this last season on the field as a leader everywhere. Everything that he did was all for this team and how much he wanted them to succeed. But now it's Josh Hoover's turn. The 2.5-year starter at TCU is coming into the transfer portal, and he has big shoes to fill on and off the field. But when you look closer, it's key to see why Coach Curt Cignetti might just see some of Fernando Mendoza and Josh Hoover, and maybe some areas where Fernando Mendoza wasn't the best, where Josh Hoover could excel even more. So both quarterbacks transferred into Indiana from Power 5 programs. Mendoza from Cal, Hoover from TCU, seeking Curt Cignetti's proven system that turned the Hoosiers into national contenders. Mendoza arrived as a 5'6", 225-pound prospect with long levers and room to grow, thriving in Bloomington after subpar protection and coaching over there at Cal. Hoover is only 6'2", 200 pounds, and he lacks the ideal NFL frame that Mendoza had, which could present some challenges in the Big Ten with their physicality, yet that compact build aids his quick release, and similar to how Mendoza used his size for balanced throws on the move, arm talent sets them apart in key ways. Mendoza zipped the ball to all levels of the field, pushing outside the numbers, being able to drive with accuracy, even off-platform throws at well. In fact, at Cal, he navigated their RPO-heavy scheme well, and he continued to do that at Indiana. He was throwing before receivers broke out of routes to maximize touch and full defenders too. Now, Hoover, meanwhile, he does a very good job of kind of layering the throws. If you know what I'm talking about, being able to throw the ball in the middle, think of how Curtis Rourke was able to do that a little bit. These vertical throws are precisely between coverage levels, dropping seams in posts over underneath defenders while keeping safeties at bay. I think this could mean that we might see more of kind of the throws that we saw over the middle, like we saw with Curtis Rourke and how he did it. But I don't think they're going to get away from the back shoulder fades, as Indiana has become known for that the past 2 years since Cignetti has been there. Hoover's velocity can fluctuate a little bit, though, so he has a tendency to kind of float an intermediate pass, where Mendoza did an excellent job of planting his feet and driving, getting good base and formation in there, especially at Indiana. Not as much at Cal, but definitely after he got the coaching of Curt Cignetti. But this isn't a problem that Cignetti can't solve. Like I just said, he didn't do it so well at Cal. He did it really well at Indiana. Mendoza's arm helped unlock Indiana's explosive 2025 offense, ranking them 4th in FEI the year prior, and then 2nd this past year with Mendoza. Hoover shattered TCU records with nearly 4,000 yards in 2024, leading the Big 12 in 20-plus yard completions, suggesting he can stretch the field like Mendoza, but his smaller arm might need Cignetti's play action to help him compensate a little bit. Now, accuracy and ball placement share many strengths, but with nuances between these two. Mendoza excelled at throwing teammates open, aiming low and away to shield from some hits that would be able to come at them, especially on the back shoulder throws and covered in the quick game as well. His field turned RPOs into really efficient gains for the team. Even, like I mentioned at Cal, when their line would crumble, he still did that a little bit there, which was really impressive. Hoover places boundary fades consistently, maximizing his receiver's radius while also leaning toward the sideline too. Both shine on the edges. Mendoza peppered the sidelines with deep outs, corner routes, all that stuff. Hoover commands the pocket by climbing pressure and adjusting his arm angle for strikes under Duress. But over the middle, Hoover tends to lead behind on crossovers and digs, while Mendoza rarely attempted deep middle throws in Indiana's scheme. It just was something they opted not to do. They opted more for the safe checkdowns if something wasn't there in the beginning. So in pressure-packed moments, Mendoza stood tall on third down, staring down rushers for high-end throws to pass the sticks, like in the 2-minute drills where he had balanced aggression and patience. Hoover delivers under fire too, but his footwork can break down more, leading to back foot misses that Mendoza avoided through better base maintenance. Again, something that Curt Cignetti taught him, and so you're kind of seeing a theme here where Hoover struggles are things that Curt Cignetti has fixed, not just with Mendoza, but Rourke and other quarterbacks in the past as well. Again, not the worst thing in the world, and these are all things Cignetti is known for fixing. Like I said, not just at Indiana, but at James Madison and other places too. Mendoza did not come in as the most polished passer ever, but when it comes to his decision making, this is where both quarterbacks are elite, in my opinion. Minimizing risks in chaotic environments, Mendoza avoided turnovers masterfully, never throwing into double coverage. Never. Very unlikely for him to throw into double coverage or missing linebackers over the middle for kind of some of those shorter throws where they could get easy picks. He took what defenses gave, executing RPOs and alerts flawlessly. Even when he was at Cal, he was doing this with his protection, left him more exposed. Hoover processes pre and post snap with excellent speed, identifying blitzes and coverages. You can see after the ball is snapped, he knows what's going to happen, and then snapping his hips to new targets without delay. You can see on film that he manipulates safeties really well with his eyes. They always say watch the top of the helmet, and you can kind of see how he's doing that. And he can do that on multiple level routes, holding deep help before hitting the intermediate guy. At TCU, he kept his offense on schedule very well, taking what the defense gave him and putting the ball in spots only that his receivers could get to. Now, those receivers were not Indiana level, and that's kind of one of the problems that Hoover had there at TCU. Hoover had his balls dropped 20 times last year, while Mendoza only had his balls dropped 6 times. With better wide receiver play, I can see his completion percentage, his being Hoover's, growing from last year. Even like his adjusted completion percentage with some better protection too. Both make correct calls at the high rate that's needed for a Cignetti system. Mendoza, deadly in the true passing downs. Hoover, violent in progressing the tempo and being able to push the ball downfield with some better level throws. But Hoover's eye work should help this team's downfield passing game more and not make them as reliant on the RPO-centric attack that they were running with Mendoza. Now, part of this goes along with the decision making that is processing all of this as well. Indiana's scheme is interesting. Indiana's offense with Mendoza was mostly RPOs, screens, and pre-snap decisions. They got away from the RPOs later on in the season, but then they got back to it some more in the playoffs, rarely requiring the NFL style of first, second, third progressions that so many people look for, which is fine. That's not a knock on Mendoza. That's just what they ran, and obviously it worked for him very well. In those dropbacks, Mendoza had a tendency to be a bit of kind of one read and then either pull it or hit his check down. Not all the time, but it did happen a good amount. One of the reasons was that he projected his passes by kind of whipping his head to his first target without eye fakes, without manipulation of the defenders, which didn't work, didn't always work in quick game, heavy set situations, but it was effective. And like I said, he had really good receivers that made him, be able to make some of those throws. Hoover's brain almost seems to outpace his body sometimes. He sees coverages materialize early, but can hesitate because he either isn't quick enough or doesn't have the receivers to be able to make the throws. At TCU, this showed in time-based plays, but like Mendoza, he'll operate in a constrained system at Indiana, mostly quick game, play action type of stuff. Hoover's superior manipulation could exceed Mendoza's limitations equally, since Mendoza hadn't demonstrated full progressions of going 1, 2, 3, often going 1 and then either running or hitting the check down. Not always, but often. While Hoover seems mentally more ready, and of course that's where operating pressure comes into play. while he seems more ready versus pressure, both stand out tough with the different styles that they respond to pressure with. Mendoza delivered strikes knowing the hit was coming, like elite throws in the under 2 second windows when defenses dared him to throw. He was always willing to take a beating if it meant he was going to make the play for his team. His toughness translated into his running ability as well, as we saw in the national championship game when he dove for the end zone and made that play to win it. Well, not to win it, but to, obviously a huge play to win the game there. Hoover absorbs contact and kind of navigates pressure in the pocket with adjusted releases and different arm angles to make throws. He climbs the pocket very well against outside pressure, maintaining his downfield vision rather than just bailing out early. In Big 12 play, he executed under duress pretty well, but did at times float around and can make his footwork look a little sloppy. Mendoza's larger frame helped shrug off some of the hits and stuff that he took, and Hoover's lighter build might make him be able to wear down faster, but his pocket command could mitigate the hits that he takes because of how well he navigates in there. Then that brings them to their athleticism and their ability to run the ball, to rush it, which clearly separates the two. Mendoza, he's no overwhelming athlete. He's not going to be on the freaks list anytime soon, but he used his quick twitch for quick setups after fakes, adding 467 career rushing yards, 11 touchdowns, including 276 and 7 touchdowns in 2025. He created just enough out of the pocket, like escaping for first downs and his RPO snuffs. His QB draws all season were delayed, were delayed and very effective, especially since Cignetti seemed comfortable at calling them at any point in time, as they were pretty much undetectable. Hoover offers minimal threat with his negative career rushing yards and a lack of bursts or elusiveness. When TCU tried to run QB draw with him, he just didn't quite have the burst to be able to make the plays that Fernando Mendoza was able to make. Now, he's a willing runner, picks up the chains occasionally, but he won't, kind of punish honest coverages with his legs. And scrambling, Mendoza kept his eyes downfield sporadically. Hoover rarely doesn't keep his eyes downfield. He does a good job of keeping his eyes downfield. He'll opt to run for himself, but also look for the man downfield, which worked at TCU, but we'll see if it translates to Big Ten play. I think it will, but you just never know going up from the Big 12 to the Big Ten. Hoover's improvisation lags a little bit, potentially capping upside on the broken plays, while Mendoza created some of the biggest moments of his career with his legs. Thankfully for Hoover, he inherits weapons like Charlie Becker, who had 679 yards, Nick Marsh, who's transferring in with over 600 yards as well, and Shaz Patterson, who had over 700 yards last season, plus staff continuity that adapted to guys like Curtis Rourke and Fernando Mendoza. So although Mendoza did certain things that worked, Rourke also did certain things that worked too. This is why I'm so high on Indiana next season. Throughout Cignetti's tenure, he has done a great job of avoiding the kind of cookie cutter QB where it's like, you're going to have to be this QB for me. Instead, he adapts the offense to his QB strengths. About the only things that look the same for his QB, kind of year in and year out, is they're very experienced and they're good decision makers. Two of the most important aspects of a QB in the modern college football game. So can Hoover fill Mendoza's shoes? I think he can, but I also don't think he'll have to do exactly what Mendoza did. I don't think we're going to see Hoover running around and, running the QB draw and stuff like that, like Mendoza did. When it comes to execution and mental acuity, Hoover has it. His processing and quick release fit some of the core things that Cignetti has done back in James Madison, but that doesn't mean he'll have to do all of that. Hoover won't match Mendoza's size or his athleticism to be able to run the ball and some of his arm zip and stuff like that, his running threat especially, but his eye manipulation and boundary precision could sustain a high octane attack and maybe bring something new to this offense that we haven't seen before. Obviously, we'll have to see the challenges of adapting to Big Ten defenses, but both Rourke and Mendoza were able to adapt to it. So why can't Hoover? Cignetti's adaptive framework has been proven through different transfer after transfer, positioning Hoover for success. He's not a replica, but he's a strong fit to keep Indiana contending. He's going to be a spark. He's going to spark some Heisman buzz. He's already third in FanDuel's Heisman odds right now at plus 1,000 odds. He's ahead of guys like Dante Moore and Jeremiah Smith. He's ahead of him too. So he'll get a ton of talk, especially if Indiana wins 11 or more games again. But in 2026, Hoover's resume suggests he can engineer the offense, blending production with intangibles to chase another incredible season for the Indiana Hoosiers. Let me know. What are your thoughts on Josh Hoover? Can he be the next Fernando Mendoza? Do you trust Cignetti with his transfer quarterbacks? Let me know in the comments down below. Would love to hear your thoughts or 5-star rating and review on podcast as well.